Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. You are on your own, and you'd better be ready to take care of it. That's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Uvalde. Got some things to show you, got some things to share with you and to say. Before I get to that, welcome to everybody. Welcome to all of the new people. Join us in the comment sections if you'd like. I claim to have the smartest commenters in YouTube land, and I hold to that. Even smarter over on Patreon, which is no disparagement against anybody who's not on Patreon. It just makes me wonder, why aren't you really smart people who are just on YouTube also over on Patreon? Come join us. You'll be glad that you did. So for the new people, it's great to have you here. Join us in the comments if you would like. We just have a couple of rules. Be nice. Don't be snarky. Don't be snotty. Don't, make your point politely. If you disagree with somebody, give the reasons that you do and your background for doing that. In some of these videos, we have a lot of people coming on and expressing opinions that they don't have the experience to support, and that's not helpful. It just, sometimes I leave them up so people can read them. Sometimes I just get rid of them because it doesn't help anybody. Inexperience is a very poor teacher. So before we get to that, I want to tell you who our sponsor is today. And regardless of what you may have seen at the beginning, whether it was some anti-Second Amendment thing or an ad for yoga pants, the real sponsor for this one is the Stonemont series, my books, beginning with the Reversion. This is a series of books that I have written. I'm working on the 6th. And it is about taking care of yourself. It is about preparing for, surviving, and then rebuilding after a total collapse. I always put how to buy them down here in the information section. And a lot of people don't know that there is an info section, an info box. There's a drop down there, and in one of those little areas, you got to kind of have to look for it. Drop it down. You will see, here's how to come to our Patreon channel. That gives you a link to do that. Here's how to buy my books from Amazon. You can get them in either. I had somebody say today, gee, I'd like to read your books, but I can't afford it right now. Well, they're also available on Kindle for only $5.99. I think the price on Amazon is $12.99. The Kindle is $5.99. Some people have asked, well, which do you make more money from? Because I want you to get the most money. Don't worry about that. Just get what you can afford and what you want. Don't worry about, I make plenty off of them. You just get what serves you best. Or there is also a way to get autographed copies from me. Personally, there's an address down there and how to go about that, so feel free. The other sponsor is the Second Amendment, and we're going to be talking about today why that is important. A lot of people are very, very concerned. Well, I won't even get into what other people say. I'm going to talk about what I say today. Excuse me while I take a sip of Instant Folgers Second Amendment. Okay, I've just put up over on Patreon, but I'm also going to put the links down here. And usually I just save these links for Patreon. It's a community on Patreon that is full of more experienced people, people who will actually watch. I'll say this. Too many people who watch YouTube videos, it doesn't mean you personally, I'm sure you're fine, but too many people who watch YouTube videos don't actually watch it. They watch it with half an eye, half an ear, or half a brain, one of those. They don't catch half of what's said or what's done, so they come on with stupid comments. Well, yeah, but and all that kind of stuff. And we don't have that over on Patreon. We have some very, very experienced and very thoughtful people over there, which makes the conversation a lot nicer. By the time you see most of the conversation on YouTube, I've already made it nicer by getting rid of the idiots. So, but usually I just put links to these things over on Patreon. Today on this one, I'm going to put the links to 3 videos down in, and it's the Uvalde videos. The Uvalde videos. And you should watch all 3 of them, and you should watch every minute of all 3. It's disgusting. It is, I would call it criminal, what you will see in there. Now, so anyway, it will be down, the links will be down below where it'll say, you know, how to go to Patreon and how to get my books, and then the links to these videos will be down there. Before I talk more about this, I'm going to talk about Uvalde again, and I'm going to talk about a police shooting right here in Overland Park, Kansas. You just gave away where you live. Yes, I did. I'm going to talk about OPSEC in another one and explain to people who don't really understand it what it is. And that ain't it. It happened right here in my city, with which I am very familiar. I'm familiar with the officers involved, with the situation, and with the investigation. So I'm going to talk about that, and it's very important. So hang out for that, because it all comes back to the fact that you have to depend on yourself, because you cannot depend on the police. Now, I'm going to preface the rest of this by saying this. There are some fine police officers out there. Now, I know some people are going to say, no, there's not. They're all Gestapo. No, they're not. No, they're not. There are some fine law enforcement officers out there. There are some fine police officers, some fine deputy sheriffs, some fine troopers, even some fine federals, federales, the feds. I know them, and I have known them. And this kind of stuff that you're going to see is such a disgrace and such a disparagement of those fine people. It makes me sick, makes me want to puke. Now, I will also say this. Law enforcement has changed a lot since I've been gone from it. And for anybody who's new, maybe I should put in a little bit about my background so that you'll know what I'm coming from. I was a police officer and a deputy sheriff for a number of years in the high crime district of a very large city. I did my time in uniform. After I got done with uniform, I went undercover narcotics, later on undercover organized crime. I did a few other things. I've been to all sorts of trainings and all sorts of schools, right? And that I don't really talk about. I mean, for instance, this thing down at the Georgia Guidestones. Yeah, I went to the ATF's bomb and arson school. I know a little bit about it, but I was never on a bomb and arson unit. So I kind of stay away from that kind of stuff. And then I did a stint in fugitive apprehension. So my experience is fairly wide and pretty darn deep. Okay, so when I look at these things, when I talk about these things, I am coming from a position of experience. Now, getting back to the fact that law enforcement has changed a lot since I was on in the 70s and 80s. Oh my God, I mean, half of you weren't even born then, right? That's like the Stone Age. Well, we handled things pretty effectively back then. We did a lot of the stuff that you see now. We did it by ourselves or with a couple of guys, and were able to do it very well before the militarization of the police, which I am totally against that. And I've spoke out about that a long time ago. They apparently need SWAT teams now for what, and what are these huge vehicles that they got from the military when they sent them on MRAPs and all. They need all this stuff. They need the body armor. They need the helmets. They need everything in the world. And apparently, in order to do what we did with a Crown Vic and a 6-shooter. Smith & Wesson Model 10, and then later on a Model 15 Combat Masterpiece, and somehow we were able to get it all done, and shotguns. We didn't have rifles and things like that, and we actually wore slacks and shirts and sometimes a tie, and we still got it done. So I have always been against the militarization of the police, because it's not about how you dress up, it is the content of the character of the officer. Okay, and what we are seeing is a very low content in some of these situations. Now, back in my day, Were there morons? Yes, there were. There were morons. There were guys that I stayed away from, that I didn't like. I'm not one of these homers to where, hey, if it's a cop, everything he does is fine, I'm going to back him up. No. I will not back up incompetence. I will not back up in authoritarianism. I will not support that kind of stuff simply by accepting it. I called it out back then, and I call it out now. There were fine officers back then, excellent officers back then. There were morons back then. There were cowards back then. I'll tell you another story, maybe. I don't know if it'll fit in with this or not. I'll tell it another time. There are morons now. There are incompetent cops now. Let me start off first off, there are still fine officers out there. Still good officers out there. Why they stay on the job is beyond me. I wouldn't go in now with all the idiocy out there. You know, it's being driven by policy, made up by people without experience, and that is a recipe for disaster. Half these departments are run by their legal departments and their public relations people. So, that's it. There are fine people in law enforcement now. If you are one of them, this ain't about you. And if you know some of these fine people, good, support them. They need it because they work a suck job for a population who, for the most part, has absolutely no appreciation for them. Okay. That being said, we have a lot of morons out there, a lot of incompetent cowards. And it's not really the same. There's plenty of people out there with, you know, they're not cowards, but they're still incompetent. They go through a lot of training, but they don't have the experience, apparently. And you're going to see it in these videos. And too many that have gone into it, either because it was just a cool job, and a lot of those end up leaving fairly soon, or they thought it was a cool job, or they thought they'd look good in uniform, or they are just little authoritarians who want to push people around. Yeah, we had those back in my day. There were, you know, I never liked them. But we have too many now, little rule followers, little order followers. You're going to see that. You cannot depend, you cannot rely on the police to help you. Okay? Period. Now there are some out there who will. They will put their butt on the line for you. Great. Those guys are what are needed. But more and more of those, I said this a couple of years ago, the good ones are leaving. The good ones are leaving because of what's going on in this country. And like I said, I wouldn't be on. So what I put those Uvalde videos down. It's by a guy, I guess he's a former cop, former detective. The name of his channel is Good Luck America. I think that's it. And he breaks it down. He has put up 3 videos, and he shows it. He stops it. He talks a lot. I don't watch him a lot. He cusses a lot. You know, I mean, it doesn't offend me. I'm not, you know, I know all the words. You know, it just kind of puts me off. But his information is good. And he addresses some of this. Who's this Tatum guy? This Officer Tatum that people, my wife Kelly used to watch him, and I kind of liked him at first until Uvalde, and he was just an apologist for these cops. And anybody who is an apologist for ineffectiveness, incompetency, cowardice, whatever, well, you've shown me everything I need to know about you. You know, the first day that this Uvalde stuff came out, I pretty much could tell, not exactly what had happened, but I could tell what hadn't happened that should have happened, and I said something about it. And some people say, "Oh, Steve, you shouldn't say things like that. You don't know. We got to wait until all the facts are." Well, you know, I have experience, and experience told me pretty much what hadn't happened that should have. So he kind of takes it to this Tatum guy, and I don't think much of this Officer Tatum anymore after watching how he's supporting these things. What you will see on those videos is unbelievable. you will see cops actually running away from the gunfire. Well, but yeah, don't give me any well buds, you know. Yeah, but if somebody is shooting at you, you'd run away. No, I wouldn't. Have you been in that situation? I have. And guess what? I didn't run away, and neither did the other guys. So don't give me that. Don't come on here and say stupid stuff like that. So he picks this apart. He shows it. There's 3 videos, and I guess all in all, it's about an hour and a half. But you ought to watch every one. Now to the situation that happened here in Overland Park just a few years ago. A family was out at dinner, and they had a son who was not with them. He had stayed home. He was having some mental issues. And the mother or father, I forget, one of them, got a call from one of the kid's friends that he had made some suicidal statements on Facebook or whatever they use, TikTok, Facebook, I don't know, one of the social media things. Okay, he had made some suicidal comments, and so I guess they tried to, well, I don't know that part of it. Anyway, somebody called the parents who were at dinner. The parents, it was going to take them probably a half an hour to get home. So the mother gets on, and this kid, he had problems. He was a foster. He started off as a foster and then an adopted child. Actually, he was from Russia, but they had adopted him. And a matter of fact, the woman was the principal at my kid's school. So they called her, and they were about 30 minutes away from home. So while they started leaving, she called the police department and told them what the deal was, asked them to go by on a welfare check. A welfare check is supposed to be go by and see if everybody's okay. Okay, they said he is suicidal. Now, we know, and I've dealt with plenty of suicidal people, a lot. You would be amazed at how many suicidal people I've dealt with. And you know how many of them I killed? None. So the Overland Park PD shows up. I forget how many cars, a couple 3 cars. And knock on the door. Nobody answers, right? And then all of a sudden, the garage door starts to open. Well, they come around, and I forget. I saw the video, but I forget whether they had their guns drawn at the time or not. It doesn't matter. All of a sudden, a vehicle starts backing out of the garage. Not at high speed like the officer later claimed that he was in fear for his life. Starts backing out of the driveway. One of the officers draws his gun and fires 13 times into that vehicle, striking that kid, 16, 17 years old, I forget how many times, and kills him. The moron officer, who I happened to see within an hour after it happened. Don't ask me how that happened, I can't tell you. Said that he was in fear for his life. In fear for his life. You know, all he had to do not to have that vehicle strike him was step about 3 feet to the right, which he did before he shot 13 times into that vehicle, killing that young boy who needed help. That kind of crap disgusts me. And if it doesn't disgust you, leave now. That is disgusting. It is disgraceful. I'll tell you what's more, no, it's not more disgraceful, but I'll tell you the rest of the disgraceful part. And of course, what happened then? Well, the kid was dead. The kid was killed. I forget how many times he was shot. And the vehicle backs up uncontrolled, in which the cops later on said, but the vehicle was swerving wildly and all. Yeah, after the kid was killed, and then backed into a tree and stopped. And then all the cops were running up there. The officer, their excuse was, well, he had been in Iraq and he was a combat veteran, and he was, I don't know if they tried to play it off that this was his training or not, in which case he never should have been allowed to be a cop. If he was either this afraid, or if he was suffering from PTSD, or if he was trained to act like this, or whatever it was, he should never have been allowed to be a cop, because a cop is different. You see, a cop is supposed to be a part of the community. The first thing you're supposed to try to do is help. That's right. So for all the little ones out there all dressed up in your, like your Delta Force, no, your first job is not to go around looking tough and trying to act tough and trying to push your way on other people. It's to try to help. See, because you're supposed to think of yourself as a part of the community. And if this idiot cop had got in his head, this is a teenage kid with some problems, I want to see if I can help him, I bet he wouldn't have shot him 13 times. What do you think? Yeah, I bet. So anyway, he got off. He wasn't prosecuted. As a matter of fact, he was bought out. I think they paid him many thousands of dollars to resign. He even fought to keep his job. He should have been lucky he wasn't in prison, but he fought to keep his job. They finally paid him $60,000 or something like that to leave. Shit. The lesson here. So I'm sorry if I got carried away. No, I'm not. I didn't even express half of as disgusted as I am with either one of these, Uvalde or this one. You guys who are out there still doing the job and doing it right, man, I'm with you 100%. Stay safe. Be good like you are. I know you're out there trying to help people. And for those of you who think all cops are bad, no, they're not. Give them a break. Judge people according to what they do, not what a whole group does. Don't be idiots. But the lesson here is this. You are on your own. The cops either cannot or will not help you. The government doesn't care about helping you. The government cares about surviving and building itself. Law enforcement as an organism does not care about helping you. It cares about expanding its budgets. Okay? Expanding its political influence. Expanding how cool it looks in the news. Individual officers are not about that. They're about doing the right thing. If you need help, I hope that you run into one of those guys or gals, one of the good ones. But you cannot depend on it. And in this world, we think about, like what I write about in my books, when it all goes tumbling down, you're on your own. Hell, you're on your own now. And you need to understand that. And that's why this is important. Not to act tough, not to show your guns all the time, not to be talking a big game all the time, but to be taking it seriously. To realize you need a gun, you need to carry a gun, you need to be able to effectively use a gun, because when trouble comes, you're the only one who's going to help you, probably. And you may need it in order to get past the people who are trying to keep you from helping your kids. That thing down at Uvalde, Those cops, they weren't good at going in and doing their job, doing what they should have done. They were really good at keeping parents from going in and trying to save their own kids. They were really good at that. I think some of those cops are lucky that some of those parents didn't think a little bit more deeply and weren't able and weren't armed. Because I'll tell you what, if I came to a school that had an active shooter and I saw a bunch of cops milling around not doing shit, well, what at least a few of them would have to worry about would no longer be what was happening in that building. And they wouldn't, they would have another immediate worry. And that worry may not last too long. And I know a lot of you feel the same way. It's up to you. Take this to heart. Understand this is what's going on in our country. Understand this thing, it may not have collapsed yet, but it is collapsing. It is collapsing more every day. And every day, it's more on you to take care of yourself and the ones who depend on you. Okay? All right. Take it seriously. I'll leave it there. Remember, we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. Well, we need to accept the responsibility for our own safety, our own security, and the safety and security of those who depend on us, because the government won't do it. Right? All right. Y'all have a good day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.